So welcome to the UKGC podcast. And on today's episode, I've got a person that, if you've probably read any bike magazine in the last probably 25, 30 years, you'll know his name straight away. And now he's progressed to video and online stuff because sadly magazines are sort of dying out a bit, I would say. And that is Guy Kesteven. So welcome, Guy.
Thanks very much for having me along, Gary.
You're very welcome. I don't know if you've listened to any of the podcasts. What I usually do, because it's sort of cycling related, so I'm going to ask you a question now that is nothing to do with cycling, just to get sort of the ice broken. So, what's your favourite ice cream flavour?
I'd normally go mint choc chip, but I had a really nice. I've just been on holiday in Italy with the family, and they did this amazing kind of caramel salted nut thing that had an Italian name. But yeah, I had that 3 nights on the trot, which I think probably makes it a favourite.
Yeah, I think if you're going to go for ice cream, Italy is the place.
Oh God, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Right. I've been watching a lot of your videos, and your intro is that you've been a professional bike kit tester for 25 years or
Yeah,
over
I'm
25
sick of that
years.
as well. I'm sick of hearing that too.
So you don't just dive straight into that. How did you start in cycling, and what did you do before you became a cycling journalist?
Uh, yeah, it's more careering than a career. I'll definitely put it that way. I mean, I've been a cyclist since my mum used to stick me in with the groceries in the back of the bike, coming back from the market when I
Yeah.
was tiny. And then, progressed to my own bike. And my mum was a keen cyclist in her youth, and she used to take me cycle touring and stuff, just like the little youth hostel hops and stuff like that. So I missed out entirely on BMX because I was in the CTC. So, which is why I still can't wheelie and still can't do any proper tricks or anything like that. So gravel's been an absolute godsend. So suddenly knowing where all these tracks are and where the decent tea shops are and
Yeah.
knowing how
Yeah.
to read a map is
Yeah.
actually more useful now than ever before. Whereas the fact I couldn't go around a berm properly has always been a bit of a hindrance. It doesn't matter so much with gravel. But then I was actually an archaeologist for a while.
Okay.
But I got into I got into rowing a bit at college and then smashed me back up. So fished a bike out of a canal that I was rowing over anyway, and it saw it glinting in the sun. Turned out to be an old Peugeot hybrid, sort of and the wheels were so wobbly it was better off road than on. So we just started arsing about in the woods because I wasn't allowed a mountain bike because they just started coming out, and I really tried to get my mum to buy one. Told her it'd be great for nipping into town for the shopping.
Yeah.
But my sister pointed out that the bin men wouldn't be able to get past it in the side entry, in the passageway to get the bin. So that was it. My dreams of a Muddy Fox escaper were quashed. I'm slightly over it now, but I still hold a grudge that my sister stopped that. So anyway, he went to college. History, archaeology wasn't the most exhausting degree. So most of the time I was just working in the local bike shop and just, got a giant escaper from there. Actually, no, I got a giant escaper from York Cycle Works because I was working there before I went to college. So I've always been around bikes. And then 3 years in archaeology kind of breaks you. Your knees wear out, your elbows wear out. It's manual labor. It's nothing like time team. It's more like,
You don't get to wear a stripy jumper.
Well, you do, but it's caked in absolute filth because you're 10 meters below the water table in a 36-meter wide cofferdam in Doncaster, and it's rained for 4 months, and you're just digging through cattle skulls. And the cattle defleshing plant is just over the river still, which isn't very popular with vegans. So yeah, it's a wonderful atmosphere because it's very sort of them and us. And you're living in squats and all that thing. So, but it's not a long career. But what I had got good at while I was doing that, I'd be the one at the back of the transit van if we were like going off site or anyway, trying to repair people with a bit of amateur physiotherapy. And I just got into the idea of, humans as sort of mechanical things and being able to, like, if you prodded someone there or put your thumb in there or your elbow in there, they could actually shovel the next day. And so I was actually really interested in taking a career in physiotherapy.
Okay.
But to do a career in physiotherapy, I had to be in one place. So I needed a job that was in one place, not just sort of itinerant busker going wherever the holes needed digging. So and my mate Russ Burton, who people might know for photography as well on the magazines, had just opened a bike shop in York, which is where my parents lived. And we were coming back from a mountain bike ride. And when we went, and we happened to pop in, and I was like, "Oh, you come and see the site I've been working on." I was still as an archaeologist. And he had he just gave me one of those sort of light bulb moments where he just looked at all these people in a row scratching away with trowels. And he just went, "So you're telling me you spend every day just scratching at the ground like a chicken?" I was like, "Oh, crap. Yeah, I do." So anyway, and because the shop was owned by Ron Kitching, which became Zyro. They're still a big distributor now. They do SRAM and Cat Eye and Panaracer and Altura and all that kind of thing. Yeah. They needed someone in the warehouse. So that was an ideal job for me to do, and then start night school in physiotherapy, which is what I was doing. And then they found me reading the magazines in the lunch breaks. And they were like, "Oh, we need someone to talk to the magazines," because the MD got a huff because they'd given a bad review to a Panaracer tyre. The Smoke Hardcore 2, it was shit. Wow. It was a shit tyre. It was nowhere near as good as the original. I didn't realise
they did a hardcore version.
Yeah, they made the tread smaller and it was rubbish. And Paul Smith, who was like the leading reviewer at the time, went, "This is shit. It's nowhere near as good as the old one." And I was like, "Well, it isn't." They were like, "Well, if you know what you're talking about, you can talk to them." So I started chatting to the magazines, and I was seeing them at races anyway. And then Brant Richards, who's now Heb Troco, but he designed a load of bikes for On One as well back in the day. He did On One's first single speed and stuff like that. He was bored. He'd just been headhunted from MBUK to start MBR. So this is 97. And he just needed someone to do fitness. But because I'd always been into sort of, I went to phys ed college when I was at uni, even though I was studying archaeology, because I had a better gym, and because I was a rower, and I was into me kind of keep fitty stuff. And he said, "Oh, you don't know anybody who can write about fitness, do you?" And I was like, "Oh, I've got this mate." And he just, and they said, "Oh, he's done a bit of fitness. He likes his training. He does a marketing newsletter," which is what got upgraded onto them. It was called Uncle Tufty's Marketing Newsletter, because I still had a Mohican at that point. What was left of a Mohican. And and he just went, "It's you, isn't it, you little..." And I went, "Yeah, it is." He's like, "Right, we got 3,000 words to write by Thursday." I didn't have a computer. I couldn't type. My girlfriend's mum had a word processor. And he said, and there's a competition for whoever can get their feature into a red top, a tabloid, for the launch issue, because this was the first issue. So I wrote this, sort of your standard mix of sort of fitness articles, but also something on penile numbness and thrush. And with the title "Battered Cods and Cods in Batter," and a big picture of fish and chips across the double page spread. And it got picked up by the Mirror. Because it was back then when penile numbness was quite a big thing, and like saddles with holes in were first appearing and things like that. So and then for the next issue, then I wrote something about, I had to be, at this point I was still my mother's dog. I was still Toby Wentworth writing, because I was still working at Zyro. And then by the third issue, Brant got bored of doing the bike test. He was like, "Do you fancy doing the bike test? I've been doing them for years. Do you want to come and..." We're getting 3 bikes for under 250 quid. And then I'm taking my dad's Trek out of his shed and pretending we bought that second hand, and we're going to ride the West Highland Way. Do you fancy coming along and writing it up? And we had the Trek 850, which was Brant's dad's. We had a Giant as well, and we had an American Eagle, which was the posh one because it had blue tires, and an Apollo, which Brant actually bought himself, which the brakes caught fire on. They had side pull brakes. I remember them catching fire on the Devil's Staircase. But so we had just 3 days meandering up the West Highland Way on these absolute, state of the art for the time in some ways, but they weren't much worse than anything else really back then in 97. And they liked what I wrote. I remember, I think there was a lad called James, and the saddle kept coming off the Giant, and the line was, "James is on the Giant, but none of the words he is using is peach." That was my peak of bike reviewing. I've written millions of words since, but I don't think I've actually eclipsed that one for a really cheesy pun. So yeah, it just like I always thought it was just going to be a bit of pin money while I was going to be a builder's merchant. Oh, sorry, builder's labourer. Because when you're an archaeologist, there's no archaeology, but you spend a lot of time helping builders dig holes.
Yeah.
Because at the time, I mean, my Yorkshire accent's completely fake, so I had to adopt that on building sites, because if you've got a posh accent off Radio 4 and a Mohican, and you're the only one on site who can stop their job immediately, because you go, oh, I found a piece of bone. You just go. Whereas if you're the bloke who goes, hey up lads, I've found some bone, but for the moment, while you dig that hole, I'm pretending it's pottery.
Yeah.
And I don't have to send this to a museum, and where it's not part of the body it was originally buried with, but we don't have to get the coroner in. And they're like, oh yeah, that's a nice piece of pottery, that, and they'll teach you how to lay pipe, and that's not a euphemism. They will genuinely teach you how to lay pipe and dig, lay a course of bricks and dig old stuff. Well, I was very good at digging holes. So I thought, well, that's going to be my main job, and I'll just do that while I'm learning to be a physio. But I never got beyond the first year of physio, because, next thing you know, I'm writing 30, 40,000 words a month.
Yeah.
For MBR. And that was 97, and it's kind of gone on since then. Although the comical thing was, I did a piece a couple of years ago for the 25th anniversary of MBR, and my word rate was less for that than it was for my first issue. That what you said before about magazines declining and why I've kind of diversified, it's just, the word rate is just shocking. And I don't think ChatGPT is going to help that much.
No. And
I'm kind of optimistic about it, though, because it will kill off the vast majority of utterly banal generic writing that there is out there. And those god-awful buyer's guides that are just pulled together by people who have less of a clue than ChatGPT, which is no fault on them. But you get about 50 to 100 quid for writing one of them, and they're 3,000 words. So if you're doing that as original stuff, then you haven't got a hope. Even if there's no way you can test the stuff at that. I mean, I did a couple when I first joined Bike Perfect, because I had Excel spreadsheet sheets searching back 5 years. And so I was just like, right, I know these 15 products, and that's going to take me, half a day. That's worth doing.
Yeah.
But actually starting from scratch, but again, that's an issue, because you're not doing group tests anymore. Because again, things like group tests on magazines just got massively complicated. Because for years I had a lock-up garage full of 26-inch mountain bike, 26-inch wide mountain bike tires. Sorry, 26-inch diameter mountain bike tires. And people would bring out 3 or 4 new tires during the year. You'd test them during the year, and you came to the end of the year and went, oh, it's tires test time. I'll just slot them in. I was like, well, which other tires should we have in from the 50 I've got here? That were all still dirty. So I didn't even have to get fresh tires in and ride them. And then all of a sudden it went 29, and then it went 27 and a half, then it went 27 plus, then it went 29 on a bigger rim, and then all the wheels changed. Suddenly like, oh my God, I've got 14 new tyres to test, not one. And then turbo trainers was the real killer, because it used to be, I used to be able to do that. If you included unboxing and reboxing, I could probably do 15 turbo trainers in 2 days. Because especially if you're doing it for a triathlon magazine, because you don't even, you just you do a shoes test at the same time. You have one shoe on each foot, because it's great, because your shoes because there's no way you're ever going to replicate proper, being in Hawaii, in Yorkshire on the road, so all these shoes that got holes in and vents in and stuff like that is like, well, if I'm just spending all day on the turbo trainer, I'll actually get a good idea of what'll be good 100 miles into, the Queen K Road in Hawaii. So that was quite a lucrative one. And then suddenly, turbo trainers, so you had the 2 parameters were, did it make a horrible noise? Did it wobble? That was it. That was it. It was actually a struggle to write 150 words on it. And then suddenly they start all producing the footsie index, and then they get power, and then they get an imaginary land of imaginary friends that goes with them on a CD-ROM from Italy that doesn't work. And you're just like, oh my God. All of a sudden it's just like, this is, it's a month just doing that. And then it's just like, and then the magazine goes, oh, we're a bit short on space. You've only got 50 words. It's like, and the same with Bike of the Year. You just end up in a position where someone sends in a $5,000 bike, and you've given literally 70 words. And if it's a specialized stump jumper epic carbon comp. There's 5 words, and you have to say it twice, so you've got 60 words. So then you've got to go and explain to the person from Specialized why they only got 60 words and why their 5 grand bike got shucked in a van with 40 other bikes because it was an also ride rather than a winner or whatever. And it's just like, I don't want to be, this just doesn't work anymore, really. So that's when sort of YouTube started happening, which wasn't that popular in the magazines at the time, but there you go. So
yeah.
Sorry, that was, as ever, that was probably more than you needed to know.
That was more than 60 words, but that's good.
I didn't even give a score either.
Well, we've got a lot in common because I wasn't allowed to have a BMX either because my dad said I was too tall. So he bought me a Halfords racing bike, 5-speed racing bike instead, which, I got on with. So and my first proper mounted bike was an Apollo. That was
nice.
That got 18 gears.
Yeah, you upgraded then.
And the girlfriend at the time dropped me at Halfords, and it was probably 8 miles from home, and it must have taken me 3 hours to get home. I was so unfit.
Those were the days.
The bike actually, it was only one size too big, which is quite good for Halfords.
Yeah, I've still got jerseys I bought as a teenager that I haven't grown into. I've got a Rally Panasonic road jersey which I could wear as a nightie, and it's just like, But anyway.
So after all this magazine writing and reviewing, you've got a wealth of experience. But how do you keep it fresh? Because, like you say, you've tested that many bikes and that many components. You've just grown when the next box turns up at the door, and it's
you're joking.
Five or 6 saddles.
No. Again, I'm going back to MBR, and I remember reading something that someone had put in there where they'd had to go and ride somewhere on test bikes, and they just whinged about the whole thing. They didn't like the bike, it was raining, and it's just like, hang on a minute. If I'm working in a factory in Halifax and I've picked up that magazine, and you've got this little prick going, oh, I had to ride this free bike that I got a puncture on, I didn't have to pay for, and I got a company credit card to pay me. If you can't appreciate how bloody lucky you are to have new toys arriving daily and just getting out on your bike. Most nights I work till 2, 2:30, and I get up at 6:30. Because, like I say, it shouldn't pay properly. It's a job. It's a classic media. It's like fashion. It's nothing like fashion in some ways, but in other ways, it's one of those classic passion jobs where it pays just enough, and there are just enough perks to keep people interested till they're about 25.
Yeah.
And the only way to get to 50 doing it is to do 3 days work a day.
Yeah.
And part of that's just relentlessly producing words, whether they're coming out my mouth, which is the great thing about a GoPro. It gives my fingers a rest because the words are spilling out anyway. They may as well come out. They'll sort of cause some kind of cerebral cyst or something. I'll have to get lanced just to get all this bloody horrible words about bikes out. But so you just industrialize it. Like I say, you wear I don't do it as much now because I'm not doing group tests and stuff. But if I had a shoe group test on for 3 months, I'd be wearing odd shoes because that's the best way to do it. And you have to do it. There's the difference between doing it professionally. I mean, I don't mean my videos are nowhere near professional, but what I mean is that's my sole thing. And it's a real scale up. There's a load of people who try it as a hobby thing. And A, it doesn't pay well enough. B, you have to be in on the 3rd day the courier driver hasn't collected something or hasn't dropped something off. You have to be riding enough that you have a comparative contextual view of it. And the more you ride, the more the algorithm fills in.
Yeah.
Because bikes are all basic. So if you ride enough, you're like, all right, it's got those wheels, those tires, those bars, that tape, that saddle, that seat post, that group set. Right. All I need to test is the fork and frame here. I know all those constants.
Yeah.
But if you're suddenly going, ooh, a bike. I've never ridden a gravel bike before. And you can see it. The classic one is steel bikes. Because everybody goes, oh, a steel bike, it's got a lovely flowing, it's steel.
Yeah.
And there's a fear as well. You need a certain amount of experience to go, that feels like scaffolding pipe.
Yeah.
And the truth is a lot of steel bikes don't feel that great because the big change for steel was when the CEN standard comes in.
Yeah.
Probably about a decade ago. And the bike industry just went, all bikes must get through this test, whether they're carbon, aluminium, or steel. And steel just went, no, can't do that. There's too much elastic deformation going. The cycles are too long. I will, and because the steel bike won't ever be loaded like that, because the back wheel's buggered off. It's the whole thing about a steel bike. It's malleable. It's like, it's the taekwondo of bike worlds. It's not your kickboxing. The bike moves fluidly. That's how it works. I mean, the best steel bikes I've ever ridden, the ones that are illegal.
Yeah.
Isla from Isla Bikes, Isla Roundtree. I once rode an 853 bike that she'd built. Oh, it was beautiful. It was like sitting on a drone. It was just the float and the flow. But she said, I can't sell them. I can't even officially make them for anyone because they don't fit any standards. Yeah. But this is how I've been making steel bikes since I was apprenticed by Zinn in the 1980s. It's just like, there you go. But yeah, sorry, I've gone completely off topic. But yeah, no, God, of course. I mean, the bike I've been playing on recently is a £12,000 Specialized, which is, and I've been testing that against a £12,000 Cervelo, and it's just, but the funny bit about that is testing that against a £2,000 bike, and it's not the kind of, and it's nice to have the flex of turning up with the fancy things, but ironically, the stuff that works really well is the stuff that you ride the least, because you just go, yeah, that's great, boom, posh it on. It's the stuff you go, oh, that's not quite right. I mean, this Specialized, it's taken me 2 months to try and decide whether it's great or brilliant. Sorry, not whether it's great, whether it's shite or brilliant, to be honest. And for most people, don't bother. It's a tiny, tiny specific grain of rice that's been scrolled by a Japanese artist win for somebody. But then sometimes it's the emotion the bike that creates rather than the engineering sense of it, which is the case with this one. It's like, makes no sense. Just buy a longer travel full suspension bike that's the same weight and has suspension you can adjust properly. And if you need to upgrade it, you can. But for half an hour of ripping your own giblets out and those of anyone around you, it's the best bike I've ever ridden. But it's horrible for many things.
Yeah.
So, and but it's fascinating. I love doing it.
Do you find that now that, especially mountain biking, and even gravel bikes now are diversifying into race bikes and cross-country bikes and bikepacking bikes, that it's harder to test it because, like you say, you get a £12,000 Specialized, which is built for a specific thing, whereas back in the 90s, you had one bike and you did everything on it. Is it harder now because there's so many genres, especially if a person came to you and said, Guy, I want a mountain bike, which one should I buy? And then there's like a massive list of all these different things. How does a new person narrow it down to the bike they want when they're starting to become so specialised in the job?
Because they're not really. It's a lot of it's marketing, really. It's a very, very pointy edge of a wedge, really. Bikes, you can, like gravel bikes are great because you can do anything on them. That's their big appeal. You can, all right, a BMC with 36 centimetre wide bars is, different to, a Mason exposure with, 50 mil tyres on and flared bars and all that kind of thing or whatever. There's a lot. Yeah, I mean, you can, of course, if you get dialed into it, then it is really confusing. I mean, look at how confused people get about tyres, for God's sake, let alone bikes. But then ironically, you can change the feel of almost any bike, certainly any bike without suspension, by the tyres. I can rewrite every road bike test I've ever done just by switching the tyres, which is what Planet X always used to do. When Dave was in charge of Planet X, you'd always get a bike from Planet X and you go, are you sure it's got silk tubs this month, Dave? He's like, oh yeah, special offer. Like, right, okay. It's like, so all the other tyres in the price category come with bits of old hose pipe with Vittoria written on. He's like, yeah, funny that. No, ours come with top of the range Conti tubs. He's like, right, okay. But anyway, sorry, I'm losing the point again. Yeah, but gravel's kind of, I don't know. Yeah, it is tricky, but it's as much because people are desperately trying to make a way to sell bikes. I mean, that's why bike packing exists, because it's just cycle touring without, it's just going out for a ride on your bike and not really. But I mean, I think I have this line I keep trotting out about it being more about headspace than head angles. And there's so much you can pull out of a bike that's not technical. It's more how it makes you feel, which is a terribly sort of, I don't generally like hippies. I'm not supposed to, I'm a punk. But it's that feel, that how they make you feel. Again, like going back to that Specialized, it just makes you want to attack everything.
Yeah.
So even though it makes you want to calm every hill and every flat piece of single track, just because it's going to hurt you anyway, so you may as well join in. And yet other bikes, you just like feel like, it's like, have they got some kind of weird Wordsworth ointment on the saddle that I've sat in, and now it's gone up, it's like gone some kind of poetry sort of enema. And I'm like, oh, I'm flowing through the dales, and it's like, again, going back to that Mason exposure, you just rode along on this lovely, beautifully built steel bike, and that's got a lovely backstory with Dom, working with the guys at the Dacia and the special Italian frame builder. But it's just like having a fancy bottle of wine. It's got a nice label on the back. It's got a nice story.
Yeah.
When actually you could buy a On-One Rujo, which is just welded up by people who've made far more steel frames in Taiwan than this guy in Italy.
Yeah.
And actually, after the first glass, you may as well have your Spanish red in a box from Co-op. As your 50. I mean, that's another bike testing analogy I always use is, if you ride a bike for long enough, it's like wine taste. You've got to spit and rinse. You've got to hop from one bike to the other. These people go, oh, I've ridden this bike for 6 months, so I know much more about how it rides. Do you bollocks? You've forgotten.
Yeah.
It's my one real peeve with bike testing. People who go, oh, well, I've only ridden it for 3 days on trails I didn't know, so I can't really call it out. I'm like, hang on a minute. I mean, if you had any other professional who came in and went, oh, no, I'll have to just sit by your car for 3 days or drive it around for 3 days to know what's wrong with it. A good mechanic will just flip the bonnet and go, oh, crikey.
Yeah.
They'll have some idea. And it gets to ridiculous levels where you start believing that you can put your hand on the bars and go, oh, right, no, that doesn't feel quite right. And that's really hard to... I've said that before to people. Like, well, they're clearly off. Yeah, you sniff too much WD-40 or something. But you get to that point, like any other craftsman.
Well, it's weird. It's when you get a new bike, or I've tested a few bikes, and you set it up to your saddle height and your bar height and whatever, and I can set it up to the measurements, that I'm used to, and then I'll go and ride it half a mile. And I've changed the saddle height and the 4.5 position of the saddle like 5 times. And you just know straight away that, oh no, this doesn't feel right.
So, exactly. And then you go back to ride the other one and go, oh, black and white. And that's where you do it. That's why group tests work brilliant, because you've got 4 bikes.
Yeah.
You're like, right, that one. Yeah, same type, actually, same, like you say, set them all up the same. And you just ride round and round on them and just go, right, it's night and day. Yeah. Whereas if you ride that one for 3 days and then ride that one for a week, it's just like, whereas it's the same as going back to that wine tasting thing. If you have a whole bottle of wine, you'd be like, yeah, it was lovely. Or it was shit. I've got a banging headache, or actually I've had a really nice chat with a man from Latvia. It depends how your evening ends. It's the same with the bike. If you ride it for longer, that first 5 minutes, that first 10 minutes, that's where it all happens, if you know what you're doing about it. So I've gone completely off track again.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Are bikes too complicated? Is it harder to choose a bike? Yes, because there's loads of them. And people like me get far too excited about tiny princessy and the P differences, when really, the best, just choose a bike, because there's so many ways a bike can suit you. That's the other thing. It can be with a brand you identify with, it can be the price of it, it can be the colour of it can be whether it's steel or carbon or handmade, or just you got 25% off it, or your mate likes one, or your mate doesn't like one and you want to wind him up. There's so many reasons.
Yeah. Well, I've worked in bike shops, and we've had customers come in and said, oh, I need a road bike, but I don't want this one because my mate's got that one. What else have you got? They don't care what it is. They want to know how much it is, and is it different to the one the mate's got?
Yeah. Or the classic one is working in a bike shop and having footballers come in. When your local football team starts buying mountain bikes. I can remember when Exeter did it, when I was working in Richard's Bikes about 92. And the first one came in and bought an M2, stock M2. And we're like, bloody hell. We'd just become an S-Works dealer. It was one of the first in the country. We're like, oh my God. And then his mate came in and went, I want that bike, but more expensive. So
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
mint, we'll get you a Manitou 1 on it. They've just come out. We've just seen them in the cat. He's like, brilliant. What even is it? He's like, oh, it's a suspension foot. Brilliant. I'll have that. And then the third, obviously the striker then came in and go, my mates are starting mountain bike and need another bike that lets extra. Or my mates are starting mountain bike. I won't do it. But anyway, he gets a Tioga disc wheel in the back and it's just like, boop, 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 and it's great. Because everybody's happy because they've got a bike that cheese their mate off and they look more top dog. And we get fish and chips for tea. Which never happens because the bike shop owner's going, oh my God, we sold a £1,000 bike. So, but yeah, often it's like, and that's how I try and describe it to people when people are like, oh, which bike should I buy? The key questions are, what are you riding now? And what do you like about it? And what don't you like about it?
Mm-hmm.
And then kind of using that frame of reference, because some people just go, oh, I had one the other week. I was like, I've got a giant Revolt, but I find it really uncomfortable. Should I buy this steel bike? I'm like going, no, it's not as comfortable as me hardtail. I was like, well, actually, a giant Revolt is one of the smoothest carbon bikes you can get. And if there's a Venn diagram, that'd be well into the steel side of things.
Yeah.
So I'd say if you think that's harsh, there's no point you buying a steel gravel bike of any kind. You just need to run a mountain bike, preferably with big tires or even suspension.
Yeah.
Because you're never going to find that answer within gravel biking. And then sometimes you get, should I buy this 120 mil? Like, should I buy a Santa Cruz 5010 with 130 mil, or should I buy a Bronson with 150 mil? And you're like, well, right. Imagine this: you're at the top of a climb, and you're going, but then there's a technical descent the far side of it. Do you trundle up to the top of the climb, don't really care how long it takes, and then absolutely smash the descent on the far side? In which case, Bronson. Or do you sprint to the top of the climb because that's part of how you enjoy a ride, and then launch yourself over the top and then hang on for grim death for as long as you can? There, get the 5010.
Yeah.
And again, it's just like, and it's the same, do you want a bike if you want a gravel bike that you want to use as a road bike as well, that sounds like it's a caveat, but then you got to go, oh, well, what kind of road bike do you need?
Yeah.
Are you just commuting into work in it? Are you just bimding around on it? Or do you want to do the Tuesday night chain gang on it? In which case, right, you need something quite stiff and quite racy, and you're just going to have to suck it up off-road. Whereas, if you really, if you don't even know what Strava is, but you have an intense interest in bird watching, then right, okay, that puts you in a different category. But, that's, again, you could buy that bike from someone who takes 3 years to make it, and you'll have custom saddlebags on it and everything like that, and it'll be a beautiful expression of you as a person. Or you could probably get something half decent off Decathlon. And again, it's just like, there's so many, and that's the fantastic thing about bikes, is that there's no right or wrong answer. I mean, it's fantastic because it keeps me just in this position of whittering on and on about it. But as a grand thing, I mean, there's very few other places where so many materials can be used and all be within spitting distances of each other. You can have a steel bike, a titanium bike, a carbon and titanium bike, a carbon, carbon steel alloy, magnesium, bamboo, whatever, if you want, and they all still work pretty fine.
I've got another question for you, because what I find refreshing, especially about your YouTube channel, is the honesty. And I know you've recently, I think the last couple of days, the opening scenes, you sat on the floor.
Oh, yeah,
with a broken Hope
pedal roast.
Cleat.
Well, no, it's just the cleat bolt.
Yeah,
that's my current clickbait campaign. Sunday roast.
Yeah, if you get a negative review, you find something that you not especially hate, or just something you think could be improved, how do the companies that send you the stuff react to a less than favourable review?
It's funny. Sometimes better than an amazingly favourable review that's still not as good as they wanted. I probably get more beef from people who I give a 4 or a 4.5 to when they were sure they should get a 5 than I do for people I slam. Because to be honest, from my point of view, I love having shit products because they're so few and far between. Like when I started and when you started riding, dear God, even something vaguely competent you received with jubilant raptures,
Yeah.
but it's been great. I've no grounding in the science or physics of suspension or anything like that. So it's been really good. Basically, I mean, as I think Joe Burt once put it, it's just like, oh yeah, it's that time when manufacturers just stuck an angle poised lamp on the back of their light and called it a full suspension bike. It was great growing up because it's evolved really at a pace even I can keep up with. I wouldn't like to dive into a full suspension gearbox e-bike right now without any backing of it. It's like trying to buy a house as a kid now. Ruined. Sorry, yeah, but back to the point. Some people get upset, and that's another place where having all this experience comes in. And to be honest, I'm really pleased he said honest, because I'm always. It just seems a bit unbelievable. You know what I mean? That these bikes are dead good, and I do get overexcited when I'm riding a bike because it's mostly fun.
That's
and the vast amount
of the passion that comes through, isn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, I will always call stuff out. I mean, some of the videos are paid for, and I have channel sponsors and stuff. But if their stuff's not that good, then what they're actually getting is a really, really badly paid professional consultant. Yeah. If they're employing me as a product consultant, dear God, I'd be able to charge them a fortune. So I was one of these men in too tight leather trousers with a Subaru in the carpet going, I'm going to teach you how to run your company. I was bloody Alan Sugar of the bike business. I wouldn't be working till 2:30 in the morning, but I'd be choosing private jets at that time in the morning. So, I mean, it's interesting because some of you just like, did you ever even... I had a silver light recently. Brilliant. Make amazing compasses. I've got a silver head torch I've had for 15 years. I was like, oh, this is going to be good. But I don't think they'd ever been near a bike. I said it, it had a laptop battery in the sense that it was the same size and shape as a laptop. And you saw the mounting structure. It's just there's two Velcro straps that kind of swung it off the top tube.
Yeah.
Like a bloke going to, sticking his briefcase on, like you see in sort of black and white films, like, hello, here comes Arthur Chudney on his way into the bank. Hey, look, he's using the bike today. He must be poor. And it was literally, this thing was just, it's like a 700 quid light. And just like the whole thing was just this cavalcade of utter rubbish. And you're like, yes, this is where I can scratch back some integrity. Thank God for that. Not yet another utterly competent but rather dull bike. Because that's the truth of it. I mean, you can buy, certainly with a gravel bike, it's almost in the nature now of a mainstream gravel bike to be a compromise.
Mm.
I mean, I remember riding the Canyon Grizzle when that came out, because the Grail was quite feisty and it had those terrifying biplane bars.
Yeah, which I'm still not sure how you wrap. I can't get my head around that.
Yeah, all I wanted to do is put two small machine guns on them and pretend I was a Sopwith Camel pilot. But I never had one for quite long enough. But again, at least it's different. And actually, that was a really light frame and I had a lot going for it. And then the Grizzle came out and it was just like, it's incredibly stable and it's a good value. It's got lots of holes in it for putting things on. And it's utterly, really monumentally boring. But it enables you to do a whole load of fantastic things on it and never think about the bike. So it's actually a brilliant gravel bike.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't impose itself on your ride. If you just want to go gravel biking, you don't want to think about your gravel bike all the time. It's brilliant because it doesn't get in the way of your riding anyway. But then I remember getting far more excited than I should have done when I worked out that the custom Canyon Apidura bags, which weren't really custom, they just had Canyon written on them, were actually more expensive to buy from Canyon than if you just bought the standard ones, because Canyon had to ship them in from Germany to fit to the bags, and they had a different duty imposed on them. So I was like, this price of Canyon. Were like, oh yeah, and you can see them going, oh bollocks, someone's noticed. And like you go, yes, look at my tiny personal victory, and it's just like, oh, you silly old sod. But yeah, it is. But it's great to have that because it gives context, and we live in a golden age of most things being fun.
Well, we do. I mean, you never see now. I mean, back in the day, Mountain Bike UK, etc., they used to have like bodge of the week. It's like when you're riding and you're like 15 miles from home and this piece falls off, this is what you can do to get you home and cobble it together with some stuff from the trail side. But bikes are seen that reliable now.
Oh yeah.
You never see that now.
I don't like the modulation on my hydraulic disc brakes. What?
Yeah.
What? Oh, my new digital shifting is marginally slower than it was before. What? You mean you're not desperately trying to keep your hand out of the front wheel as you go for a down tube shifter on your 5-speed because you decided to go rough stuffing, and your rims just haven't exploded in a petrol station because unwittingly you only had a frame pump and that fell off, and so you tried to do it with an airline, but your rim brakes had worn clean through the sidewalls because that's what they did every month. It's like, hello, it's beyond first world problems, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, yeah, how do people react? Some people, it's the same with any other thing. Some people, and I guess it's just because I've been around longer. I mean, it's hard. You don't blithely write stuff. You need to be fully aware of the impact you're having.
Yeah.
And it's not like back in the glory days when there was only 3 magazines and you were God. You could write what you wanted because there was no real comebacks. You knew there was nowhere else they could advertise. I mean, the bike media now is entirely surplus.
Yeah.
And that's why there's so much sycophantic bike media or advertorial or stuff like that, which, it's just like, oh, well, I don't want to upset them. It's always funny when a new stuff comes out and you can see everybody like going, who's going to post an opinion? Who's going to, I'll say so. I'll do me. Well, I couldn't really tell you what it's like, so I only rode it for 3 days. And they'll always wait for some silly old sod to me go, right, the new RockShox bike is spiky, or I think I'm the only ever person I've seen actually go into print and say Campag e-car feels dreadful. That the shifting is, I mean, it's a beautiful thing. And I love the way when you stare at the cassette going around, it's kind of trippy because the cogs are in a beautiful procession. And the brakes are brilliant. The brakes are amazing. But the shift, that little thumb shift on it, it's like a knockoff Aldi cheesy Quaver. It's appalling. And yeah, it's like, and I come from the age of the die-hard Campag mechanic, but that's the thing. That's, again, like steel bikes, like Reynolds 725. I've never ridden a good Reynolds 725 bike. There you go. I've said it now. Someone might have done it. Someone might have managed the alchemy of making it, but that is just dead. And a lot of them, and just like, but there's this mystique around them, and they carry that on. Oh, it's steel. It must be like this, And some people have done it brilliantly, and others haven't. And sometimes you can have bikes with identical numbers, but you can't quite work. That's where this job's really interesting and fascinating. Where hopefully I can provide some insight. Is where you're going, why this one is different on utterly similar bikes. And sometimes, I mean, handlebars, the most underrated component in terms of completely screwing a bike up. I've had bike tests that completely revolved around the difference between two $16 handlebars. And you're literally in the sleet changing handlebars and just going, because you've changed the fork, you've changed the tires, because the forks are the same, the wheels are the same, the tires are the same, but you're like, well, it must be something else. So you just change everything and you're like, I'm going to find it out, because that third route after that corner, why does it hurt on this bike and why doesn't it on that? And, I had a bike sent in recently where they thought they'd done me a tremendous trick because they fitted a new Dida-shaped handlebar on it. And they were like, oh, we'll put this on Kesel like this because it's new and you won't have ridden it before, and that gives us some props. And it's like, oh, yeah, okay. It was horrible. It ruined the bike, made it feel like a bag of shite. And so I was like, have you ridden this handlebar? I was like, no. I was like, yeah, don't put any on your bike, But because I was like, it shouldn't feel this bad. I changed the wheel, but it's like the fork, it might have too many bosses in the fork, but it kind of looks all right. And again, things like that, like steel, you kind of get an idea how it rides because the shape of the tubes and stuff, that's quite a giveaway. Carbon, not a clue.
Yeah.
That's the blanket over your head.
Yeah, it's all going on the inside, isn't it?
Yeah, because you've no idea. It could be fiberglass for all you know. It could be full of resin, or it might be the finest hand-rolled gossamer silk tea, whatever.
Again, working in the bike shop, it never failed to amaze me when you were changing the headset bearings and you had a look down in the frame. Just the complete state of some of them.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
think
And
people are riding downhill on these things.
yeah. Hambini's never going to run out of things to chop in half and be appalled about.
No, no. So you've tested probably literally thousands of bikes,
Yes.
but in your garage now, which bike belongs to you? And if you hadn't got any to test, which one would you be taking out?
Well, I've got two tandems because, I mean, to be honest, there's not much point in me having a personal bike because I don't get to ride them enough because I'm always riding test bikes. But I've got two tandems, which I dearly love. That's my particular perversion. I've got a Nikolai full suspension enduro tandem, which I ride with my daughter and occasionally my wife. And I built up a Land Escape gravel tandem, full custom geometry for me and my wife to ride, and that's lovely. That's a properly indulgent. I've just put axis shifting on it. It's got a copper coloured frame that matches the SRAM copper chains. I had to buy them. Note of indignance in voice. 3 bloody SRAM chains during COVID. Oh, that's smarted. And,
that's why there was a shortage. You got most
exactly. I had most of them. Yeah. I was a rolling repository of copper SRAM chains. Yeah. But that's lovely because, weirdly, people don't send custom gravel tandems in for test on a regular basis. I ride my specialized chisel I've got. I ride far more than I should just because it's great for irritating people. Because it's on the face of it, a quite affordable aluminium. I think a full chisel you can buy for £2,000.
Yeah.
But I just got the frame and just had some bits lying about. And it's not even the right size frame. It's an extra large. So it's ended up with almost no stem. It's got some weird... It just ended up as a repository for all the really stupidly light mountain biking bits I had, just to wind up gravel riders as much as anything else, because it weighs under 9 kilos in its fastest trim. And it's got 63mm wide tires that only weigh 580 grams. So they're lighter than most that are quite a lot of 40mm wide gravel tires. And it's got 100mm travel proper suspension for. And it goes like stink. It's a beautiful frame. It's their Smart Weld aluminium, which is the nicest titanium frame I've ever ridden, even though it's actually made of aluminium. And it's just an indulgence, and it's a flicking the needle across the record moment, which is kind of what I need from personal bikes. But again, just like I need, it's like a nice to have something different because I'm testing things like Canyon Grizzles or whatever all day, or perfectly good mountain bikes. So I'm getting a Forbidden Druid high pivot mountain bike just because that's something a bit different. But you need to be careful. You can't ride those kind of things all the time. I've always wanted a Jones with the truss fork. I don't know if you know those. Jones mountain bikes.
My friend had one. Yeah,
beautiful bikes. But I knew if I rode one of them too much, it would skew my kind of perspective on normal bikes. In the same way, you can't ride the same brand of shoes all the time. Even though my YouTube channel is sponsored by Giro, so I wear them for videos. I wear other shoes all the other times because I can't get used to the footbed size or the width or the fit or the way, because otherwise I'll just like Giro shoes. And there's a time when I rode Specialized shoes a bit too much when they had all the orthotics and body geometry in it. And they're great. I love them. But it's like, okay, right, it's affecting you as a tester now.
Yeah, because you're comparing it to what...
Yeah, you're bending the chesometer. You've shifted it too far in one direction or another. So, but I'll ride anything. I'll get as much pleasure as riding my daughter's Rally Mirage that we found in a wood. Just because it's funny remembering what non-index plastic thumb shifters felt like, and having a brake that's just a brake in name only. Because
there's loose attachment to the wheel.
Yeah, and going, oh my God, it's got 3 chain rings. How amazing. But it just goes back to that thing. Bikes are a fundamentally great way to cross the earth and join up fascinating places and be an idiot and be a child again. And you can do that on any bike. And
true.
And you can get whatever bike you're riding, someone will be going faster than you and having more fun. And they won't necessarily be. How much fun you're having is entirely up to you. But someone will always be going faster on it, regardless of whether you've got the state of the art bike or you just happen to be fitter. Everybody with a fancy bike's been beaten by someone on an absolute absolute piece of scrap iron, and everybody on this piece of scrap iron has beaten someone on a fancy bike, and that's great.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate level of it. But then again, we're all sharing these same spaces, and that's why gravel events are great. So, I mean, do people know what to turn up to wearing on a gravel bike or riding really yet?
Guy, there's no rules for gravel.
Exactly, that's it, and that's what's great about it. But it's quite confusing. I mean, let alone what bike do I choose? Should my helmet have a peak? Should I have a cap under a helmet with no peak? Should I have
perfect for
fitted
me.
baggies, no baggies, cargo shorts, flannel with vents in? Oh,
it's perfect for me because anyone who ever rides with me knows that I get dressed in the dark. So I'm colourblind as well. So I'll turn up in anything really.
Yeah, it's great.
That's what I like about it.
Yeah, that is the wonderful thing about it. It's very funny watching now, people getting upset about proper racers getting into gravel racing, because it really reminds me of it's just like mountain biking how it used to be. It's like when David Baker and Tim Gould turned up from Peugeot cyclocross team, and they had a team car, then a Peugeot 504 with bikes on the top. That's not mountain biking. No, it is now. It's just like, well, you were perfectly happy when you were winning. You thought you were the best racer in the country until someone who was actually a racer turned up. But it's the same gravel now, and it's into, he used an aero bar. Yeah, you probably have a heart rate monitor on, or you're using a protein drink afterwards. We're all doping on some level.
Yeah, that's what I like about it, because it is diversified, and you just do what you want.
Yeah, that's, and again, just going back to that, what you were saying about how do you choose a bike now? Just choose a bike that lets you do as much of what you want to do as you want. So if you want a bike that you want to do a lot of going fast on and maybe some road, get something like that. If you want a bike that lets you do quite a lot of almost mountain bikey stuff, get something on that end of the spectrum, or But if you're not quite sure about whether to get a 40 or 50 mil tire, get a 50. You always put 40s on it. No one's gonna, you're not gonna get stoned in the street for having a slightly larger gap. It's not like mountain biking, where if there's a gap between your shorts and your knee pads, you will be, you'll be called out in some kind of jihad. If you've got a bit more wind under your foreground, nobody's gonna mind.
Well, do you know, I've noticed recently a lot more people suddenly appearing with bar ends on their mountain bike, which was in the 90s. We had your Onza bar ends. That was the things to have, and then that became deeply unfashionable.
Oh God, yeah.
They're starting to creep back in, especially like the Ergon style grips with the built-in. I've got a pair of those.
Yeah, I had a Cervelo. It's still not out. Cervelo ZFS full suspension bike, and I've had it since start of this year. It's still not officially out. Launches officially in August, and I was riding it publicly at a lot of events. Rode it top of the rock gravel, everything like that. Nobody asked what it was, because I'd got some SQ Labs grips which have built-in little horns on the inside edge.
Yeah.
And there was this bike. There was a whole load of stuff that wasn't out on it, let alone the frame. There was like unreleased wheels, all sorts of stuff on it. Even when it had like T-type the day it came out, nobody gave a shit. Everybody was like, what have you done to those handlebars? What are they? It was just like, it was the best hiding in plain sight I've ever done. It's like, it's like, everybody's just fixated on bar ends. It's just like the most offensive thing you can do. It's hilarious, isn't it? It's just like, So it's always interesting what people do and don't pick up on. And I think that, again, going back to how I do the job, it's vitally important you do that. It's a massive, I'm lucky to have a lot of good friends who have very little respect for me. And I've always told them that. It's just like, right, just as soon as I start vanishing up my arse, you grab me and you haul me out like James Harriet in a hurry, because it's so easy. Again, I shouldn't have a pop at the magazine guys, but I've been, you're riding a metal rim. Oh, I'm not taking that. It's like, no, hang on. The cheaper the bike is, the more important it is. The cheaper the component is, the more component is. Because if someone buys a shit Yeti or a shit, whatever, Pinarello, whatever top bike you want to throw in there, Vielo, there's some beautiful, lovely top-end bikes out there doing really special things, but really, they're not going to love or hate mountain biking based on that. They'll just, if they like it, they'll get another one. If they don't like it, they'll get another one at that level. Whereas if someone buys like a 500 quid gravel bike, that's a huge amount of money to spend on a bike still.
Mm.
So if they buy a god-awful Schwinn that's just cast iron, and they've managed to kind of massage it into riding okay by putting massive tyres on it. I did a test. This comes from a test I did for Cycling UK, the CTC magazine. And it was awful, this bike. And it had gearing that was only suitable to like downhills in Norfolk with a tailwind. It had a massive chainring on a tiny block at the back. Or you had a Voodoo that was, a really nice bike for the money. And that would be the difference between someone going, oh, well, gravel bike's not for me. I can't turn this gear around. I can't get up these hills. The frame's uncomfortable. I can't fit my bags on it. If they'd have bought the Schwinn. But if they bought the Voodoo, I'd go, okay, it's a bit rough. I could maybe do with bigger tyres, but it'll take bigger tyres. But they could have a really, really good ride on that bike. That's the gateway is opened. They might be a cyclist for life from now.
Yeah.
And it's so easy as someone who does have kit coming in all the time just to ignore that stuff or just pass it off and just go, oh, I've got this. It's not really important. But you've got to remember that, like, when all you could buy as an upgrade was brake blocks.
Yeah.
That was massively important. You bought some Aztec grey brake blocks. Oh my God. They were like, you saved up the month for those buggers. And if the devastation if you found you'd been lied to, or you just misunderstood something. I remember being told that some Panaracer tyres were puncture proof, but having no understanding what pinch punctures were. This is after I'd done my O levels, and we rode out with Brian. We were meant to be going me and Legsy, who now works on the Hadron Collider, so he should have known better. He was clever, but we were meant to be riding from York all the way out round Kielder and everywhere. And we never got further than Tan Hill Pub because I used all my puncture repair kits there because I had no comprehension of what a pinch puncture was. And so I was going, but these tyres are supposed to be puncture proof. End up in tears in bloody Richmond, ring me dad. And having a very quiet drive home because he didn't want to drive all the way to bloody Richmond to pick up his idiot son. He meant to be having some peace and quiet for 5 days as me and Legsy got bitten to death by midges after our bus. But that's, going back to that original point, I firmly believe, what things have we covered here? Because Zoom will cut us off eventually. Never take what I do for granted. That's just disrespectful.
Mm-hmm.
And again, going back to the point of whether, am I afraid to call out stuff that's rubbish? No. It's great for credibility, but also my responsibility is to someone, not my mates in the industry who I, bump into on a regular basis or chat on WhatsApp or whatever. I've actually got no responsibility. My only responsibility to them is to do my job properly and diligently and try and think of all the different ways that this product might have been designed and who it might suit and then put my own personal spin on it, which might be I don't like it, but it'll really suit someone who does this. But my responsibility is to someone who's spent a lot of money, who I meet, I've never met before, but they're coming towards me on a trail or a gravel ride, or I see them at the start of a gravel event or whatever. And if I look at what they're riding and it's something I've reviewed, I've got to have a completely clear conscience that either I went, well, you didn't read what I said about it, or you don't give a flying fuck. Sorry. But, or good. You made a good choice there. And if I helped it, because that's the weird thing with YouTube, having worked on magazines for the best part of a quarter of a century, you get people going, oh, I think that's him over there. Very few people actually come up and talk to you or anything like that. As soon as you start putting your ugly, blathering mush in people's phones or on their computer, you're their best mate straight away.
Yeah.
They come up to you like they're a dog and you've got ham in your pockets. And it's great. And I love it. Sarah, my wife, was really, really worried about it. And because she thought, oh my God, you see like pink bike comments, things like people getting roasted all the time. But I think if you're just approachable and you're just yourself and you don't try and have airs and braces. You have occasional moments where, oh yeah, I've tested that. Oh, and I've tested that. And people going, what are you on about? Oh God, yeah, it's ridiculous. Let alone, coming up behind people talking to yourself all the time, which I'm so used to now. It's just like, I forget. People start chatting to me. I'm like going, why, they're talking to me? And I'm going, well, I've been talking to them as far as they're concerned. But basically, going back to where I was, I need to go, if I see someone who spent a fortune on that bike because I soft pedaled on the review, then that's a no-go. That's right. Go and work for Deliveroo. You'll probably earn more. And that's where you should be. You've failed.
Yeah.
You're not doing it anymore. And every review should start like that. It's a reset every day, because it's a bloody privilege what I do. I mean, your nurse injuries, you write until God knows when, you're out in all weathers, but you can never tell people it's not the dream job. Because it is. It's bloody great. Yeah. Especially, and then now I'm doing, now. So we've got a retirement plan, because I will get too old for it eventually. And that's, this is my blatant plug. This is like getting someone on who's written a book. I have written books, by the way, but you're probably not interested.
Well, yeah, I was looking at that, yeah.
What, no, Peddling Past. I don't know. Have you seen that?
No.
This has got all sorts of buzzwords we've invented for this. It's my wife and I's time travel gravel channel.
Okay. Which
is basically, I mean, I did some of the route guide work and all the guidebook writing and the videos and stuff for the routes that Cycling UK have been launching recently, like King Alfred's Way, West Kernow Way, Rebellion Way. I've kind of got more and more involved in each one in terms of route planning. And I've just done the video and guidebook for the one that's launching in August across Snowdonia. And people love bikes and history, it turns out. And because I'm sort of got a historical background, I'm still interested in archaeology, and Sarah's really into her history and stuff and her true crime and things like that. It just seemed like, a nice opportunity to put short gravel rides together.
It's come full circle then.
Yeah, completely. It's because I can't go on. I don't bounce like I used to. And I'm never going to send a 50-foot gap jump, which is becoming, what's called a trail bike now is what a downhill bike was when I started.
Yeah.
And that's going to catch me out eventually. I mean, you saw the picture of my ankle that I had to hide from my wife for 4 months with that pedal cleat thing. Which probably says a little too much about our relationship, but anyway. But no, the lovely part of our relationship is we have a great time sitting on our new tandem. And currently, we've only got about 8 videos up because it's very much a side project. But it's a nice way to get cream teas on the business. And also, if you go to a historical place, you're almost guaranteed to get a cup of tea and there'll be a lavatory, which when you get into the creaky and leaky stage, like we are, is great. And again, it's more to just it's. Because I had never realised how hard it is to write a route, because maps have always been my favourite books. And there's nothing more I love than putting routes together. And it's just one of those things, if you can do it and you've got a passion for it and it's something you love doing, all right, we got the countdown. Yeah. But it turns out that people don't like doing routes, which is why things like Commute and something are so popular. So we've just started putting together basically 30 to 50 kilometre long, relatively easy gravel and road rides, or gravel and quiet road rides, just linking, places of historic interest up.
Okay.
So starting in Yorkshire, but we'll branch out because it's local and starting out to other points. And they seem to be getting not many views yet. So if people want to go and see Peddling Past on YouTube or on Instagram.
If you send me the link after, because I'll put links to your YouTube channel on the podcast as well. So
yeah, but I'd genuinely be really, really interested to see what people think. Because I think bikes are a great way to, we're obviously talking because of this, bikes are a great way to go and join the dots up in the countryside.
And a gravel bike is ideal for that, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Eat gravel, whatever, you can just, and so that's a retirement plan. When I do my ankle one too many times is me and Sarah toddling about on the tandem, which is great because we met a couple who must have had a combined engine of about 180. When we were in a cafe in Easingwold on Saturday, Sarah was just like, "That's us." That is. In a few years' time, I was like, "Oh, great!
Well, wouldn't that be great?" Yeah. That's the goal, isn't it? Yeah.
The other nice thing, Fountains Abbey is never going to get made obsolete by a new wheel standard. Whereas my video probably will.
Yeah.
It's just like they're only relevant for my reviews are only relevant for months or at most a year. The only one that keeps people coming back is a Bianchi gravel bike video where I pronounced Bianchi wrong. I still get people commenting on that. It's great. It's great for the analog, but algorithm rather. But anyway, right, we've got 8 minutes left. Come on, Gary. Herd me into a corner. Do your sheepdog whistling. What do you need? What do you need more from me? I've done my blatant plug.
This is going to be the most difficult question of the episode. All these bikes you've tested, what's your favourite?
Best answer I ever heard to that. What's the best bike I've ever ridden? What you've ever tested is Brant, going back to Brant who played at MBR. He said the best bike you've got is your bike. So it doesn't matter what's in the magazines or on the YouTube or in the shop window. It's the one you can go downstairs or into the shed and go and ride now. That will always be the best bike. What is a gravel bike? Oh, we're doing a gravel channel, aren't we?
No, it doesn't matter. It's just it's cycling channel, really.
Okay. What's the best bike I've ever ridden? Recently, Mason Exposure.
Okay.
Really love that.
That's the one with the big wheels, bigger tyres.
Bigger tyres. It's still a gravel bike. It's not the ISO.
And the built-in shelf on the fork.
No, that's the ISO.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't so keen on that, to be honest. We did, yeah. Moving on. Yeah, no, I love the Exposure. It's got more holes and bolts than I really need. But I'm really. They've. Oh no! Oh, nearly broken embargo. And there are two other bikes I'm riding that I'm very excited to ride. Love Aquatic. I love what Si does with bikes. Again, steel bikes. I go through a bit of a steel bike phase. I don't know if it's like the material menopause or something like that. But they're great. But then
I've got a Cascade.
Lovely bikes, and I love the On One Rouge. I keep mentioning that, but that was a fantastic bike. Just a mild steel. It felt like the kind of Daimler Jaguar that not Arthur Daly would have driven. It's like had this amazing surge in like this third gear overdrive. It felt like if I was driving through cardboard boxes in a 70s police drama, I'd want that. Best bike I've ever ridden, though. God. I had a Stigmata, and I had an original Stigmata I wish I'd never got rid of. That was ace. That was a really good compromise between like race bike and gravel bike.
Was that 35mm tyre max, though?
Yeah. But it went like stink. Did the 3 peaks on that. Hated it, but I enjoyed the bike aspect of it. Yeah, I don't know. It's constantly changed. It's like asking, it's like
I said it was a difficult question.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's my tandems, if I'm brutally honest.
Yeah.
Because they're, it's a great way for me and Sarah to actually ride together, which is great. I like riding with people. I like, and she brings a lot to the riding. She's like, "What's that? Shut up! Why are we going over here? No, stop there, you idiot! Let's have another shandy." So yeah, love them. I love the tandems I had, but
cool.
Bikes are just great. There's no specific bike that's better or worse than another. Bikes are just awesome. Riding bikes is great. Don't get as much as it's stupid. It seems daft for me saying this because I've made a living by telling people they should buy this or that. I think the best thing I can say to anyone about bikes is don't get hung up on it. Listen to me for entertainment. Don't let it direct. Yeah. Hopefully I will find you a bike you will like.
Yeah.
That's my job.
Yeah.
But on a personal level, I'd say just enjoy whatever bike you've got now and let that influence what bike choice you might make in the future as well. If it's too stiff, get a smoother one. If it's too smooth, get a stiffer one. Just work it up like that. But yeah. No, I've been lucky enough to, like you say, ride thousands of bikes, and I could witter on about what I've loved and what I haven't. I'll be the one influence you wished hadn't turned up.
Oh, this is going to be really easy to edit.
Yeah, you say that, but yeah. Oh, good. Yeah.
Guy,
well, I've not sworn.
Thanks so much for coming on.
Well, no, thanks very much.
Most of the people that I try and get on, because I know they're enthusiastic, and I think you're probably the most enthusiastic guest we've had on the channel so far, and it really comes across.
I'll take that. I'll take that.
And I think
it's a privilege being on here, and it's a privilege doing what I do. If I can't be enthusiastic about that, well, I should sod off.
Yeah, and I think it's great for beginners and for veterans, if that's a word in cycling, because definitely speaking to you now, I know we're talking about honesty, and I think that really comes across as well. So yeah, thanks.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Yeah, but if anyone wants to get in touch, like I say, if you put links at the bottom, if anyone wants to know anything,
yeah,
because if people, it's like I get this because I can't ride everything into the ground. Obviously, I can't do the durability side of things. So I've got a group of mates who just destroy stuff for me, and I was like, "Oh, you sure?" I'm like, please take this and ruin it for me, because I can tell you how it feels in the first 5 minutes or an hour. I can do all the dial adjustments, put it in context like that, but I can't wear it out. That's their job.
Yeah.
And they're always like, oh, they feel bad about, telling me, oh, they feel ungrateful if I've given them something. And they say it's shit. I'm like, no, that's the best thing you can say. So
Well, if you need
people...
anyone who's definitely has questionable line choices,
Right, okay,
you're
you're
looking
on.
at him.
You're on. But if people have got questions, that's the most valuable thing to me. That's what I need to run on. They're my oxygen, because I need to know what other people think and where their perspectives are and stuff. So never think, oh, I don't want to bother him. I mean, it might get a response. You might not. I apologize if you have contacted me and I've missed it somehow. But just rattle on. Keep nagging me.
It's a shame that,
and I'll always try and help.
It's a shame that this isn't a phone-in program, because I'm sure there'll be loads of people with questions like better than the ones I've come up with. But obviously it isn't.
But but there's ways to get hold of me.
Yeah.
And
I'll definitely put all the links on the podcast page.
And if you see me, if you see me out riding with see some idiot talking to himself with the GoPro on his chest, then go, all right, because again, it's great chat, people.
Yeah,
because it gives me a perspective. But I will ask you a load of questions and fill your ears with absolute nonsense. Like
right, Guy, you need to shut up.
Sorry. Okay. Sorry, Dad.
You need to wind it up. But anyway, thanks a lot for coming on. I've really enjoyed it.
My absolute pleasure.
I hope you have too.
I have. I've loved it. Well, as you might tell, I quite enjoy talking about bikes and myself. Terrible. I mean, my wife's got an hour of peace, so everybody's won.